one that has been researched extensively in science textbooks and is something that has been bent, bounced, diffused, reflected, refracted, scattered, absorbed, and transmitted. But guess who always emerges shining brighter than ever? Lights, ta-da! And with the puns and jokes all out of the way, allow me to quickly introduce everybody on the panel here. Before I get into the introduction of panel, they don't need any introduction, but even then, after just having a conversation with Vikram just now and understanding just in that 10 minutes, I've practically forgotten what all I was supposed to ask because there is so much more that one needs to know, one has to. So I really have lots and lots of questions, and if I make any simple error, please bear with me. This is not something that I'm extremely comfortable with, but I'm going to give it a try. Okay. Let's start with Kohelika, our very own editor designer of last year. Kohelika,
Yay!
She studied architecture at Pratt Institute of Design in New York and eventually worked with Sir Norman Foster before moving back to India. Her remarkable work also has been showcased in Allegro several times, and I personally love how she constantly ups the ante with material experimentation, and her design, according to me, is a classic. Rajat Sodhi, right there, second. Moving on, we have Rajat Sodhi, who graduated from Architectural Association in London in 2007 and earned his DRL Master's degree in 2009. Before founding Our Project, a research-based design practice with offices in New Delhi, London, and Cincinnati, he worked on projects for Herzog de Meuron in Germany and Foster's and Partners in England. Our project has won numerous international awards, but outside the studio, Rajat is pursuing carpentry and teaching at Sishant University. Kohelika also is a carpenter, right?
Yes.
Vivek Gupta,
So am I.
here, and with the Tiger Division. He's a principal architect at Urban Vivek and Associates with over 35 years of experience in urban planning, architecture, and interiors. He champions the built to suit ideology, which focuses on aligning designs with climate coordinates and clients' needs. His expertise in climate responsive and energy efficient architecture is something I personally admire about, and also the zeal for life that he has is extremely contagious. Thank you, Vivek. Sanchit, right there, our very own blue-eyed boy of design, never fails to surprise me with his wit and rather unusual way of looking at design. Sanchit Arora is a principal architect at Renaissance who never ceases to amaze us with his hospitality project in the capital. From drama to playfulness, every cafe and bar done by him comes packed with an element of surprise. He earned his bachelor's degree in architecture from the Sushant School of Art and Architecture in Gurgaon, India, where he also received scholarships to study at some of the most prestigious institutions in UK and Europe. All right, let's get going. Aryaman. Aryaman, the youngest person on this panel, but with plethora of experience. He's a CEO of Innovative Design Group, a trailblazer in India with substantial footprint across South and Southeast Asia. Aryaman oversees a portfolio that includes over 30 esteemed global brands. Innovative Design Group equips the architecture and design industry with the best lighting products and technology. Their diverse portfolio boasts lighting schemes for 500 plus properties from Taj Mahal's East Entrance to the Sun Temple at Madeira. Innovative Design Group has been featured in numerous architectural interior projects, and RM's efforts have been admired by the design community and multiple publications. His Light Talk series fosters dialogue with industry pioneers, showcasing his commitment to advancing both lighting, design, and the broader architectural landscape. So thank you, Innovative Design Group, for this platform, and I'm looking forward to this now. Before we jump into our topic for today, I wanted to establish a foundation for our listeners, and I want to understand this from each one of you. What is good lighting design? Who would like to go first?
Come on, Aryaman, I think this one falls in your court.
So, for me, like lighting design is something that guides you through a space. Not only that, it also adds the drama. I say this often, lighting is the last afterthought that people usually have, but it's actually the unsung hero. The way you light up any space, you can have multiple ways to light it up, and you can tell a completely different narrative through that way you're placing a fixture, what typology of beam angle you're using, the color rendition on the light source that you're using. There's multiple aspects that actually play a vital role to enhance the architecture during the evenings, I would say, or any space. So I think a powerful lighting design can definitely transform any space.
So the way I see it, for me, it's like allowing visual appreciation, so whatever that way. So lighting to me is, as I see this place, it's all about visual appreciation. So for me, good lighting will be that.
Rajat, what about you?
I mean, light's essential to everything we do, and so when it comes to lighting design, I think for it to meet the functional requirements is kind of the absolute minimum. But I think where it becomes good lighting design is where I think the lights almost sort of disappear and they create like a emotional, ephemeral, visceral kind of connection with whatever is it that we are kind of occupied doing in or inside.
Well, I think majorly if I kind of have to divide lighting, I think it has to be divided as per typologies, maybe residential or commercial or let's say hospitality. But then when we kind of get to, as he said right now, then it kind of bifurcates into utility as well as aesthetics. So some lighting kind of, of course, nothing is possible without lighting. You call it your home or you call it your, be it sunlight or be it artificial light. Within that, there are so many bifurcations, that kind of lighting sweeps into. Then within that, what is the color variation? What are the color temperatures? What are the color associations of that space with that lighting? What are the beam angles or let's say your temperatures kind of varying? What are the typologies? From a 3000 or 2700 to a 7000. How that varies. I think that's the beauty of light and how kind of it's not that you get influenced by light, it is also the light that influences you. So that's the most important thing. So I think that is what lighting does to a human behavioral skill set as well as the space skill set.
Right. So tell me something, how can architects and product designers or interior designers leverage artistic lighting beyond the visual aesthetics? How do you guys achieve that? Who wants to take this?
Hello. Okay. I'll take a simple example of hospitality design, right? You divide hospitality design into, I think that's majorly what my portfolio says, but then of course we do residential. But within hospitality design, there's one layer that we call it as the architectural light. That is only used when you're kind of servicing the restaurant, or let's say when they're cleaning the restaurant. That is the main architectural, the lighting that you see, those COBs and all. But then when you have the drop lights or when you have those, you call it the artifact lights or whatever you call it, the major design lights, those are the ones that are made to work as per utility. Be it, if you're sitting on a table, what is the height? At what angle is it suiting the light falling on the temperature that's falling on your food? How does your food get served? Also a very important thing. I'm just running from another meeting right now where I had a fight with the chef, where the chef needed us 7,000 Kelvin in the kitchen versus 3,000 outside. Because the food is always set in white light,
right,
cold white light. But the other thing that I've been fighting lately with chefs, or be it the food, the connoisseurs, is the fact that you always have this window, right? And your bar is very dimly set, very romantic, or very, they call it the vibe, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you have this window, a cold blue window popping out, and these chefs making, these izakayas or the omakase is happening all together. So I think that's always going to be a fight. But then how do you kind of work around a 7,000 going to 3,000 to a 2,700? That's been going on. So, but it is interesting to see how lighting is, gazing. Like post-COVID, I would say it's just flooded now. Like the way the lighting is happening and how it can change the belief of a restaurant from, let's say, a morning vibe to an evening vibe to, let's say, a later night vibe. So yeah, it keeps changing.
So Rajat, you want to tell me how can it actively influence the emotional and psychological experience of a space?
I think that the most, I would say, at a base level, like the biological response we have to light is the way our pupils would dilate, or or how our corneas would kind of open up and close. So our ability to focus, our ability to see things with clarity and detail, these things get affected by what kind of light we are seeing things under. So like as Sanchit was saying that chefs want to look at things at very high level of precision, so they want a light that kind of really teases out those aspects in their work environment. But then at a bar, you don't really want to be looking at things with that much precision, right? Like you're on a date, you don't want to see things with too much precision. You want a little bit mystery.
Yeah.
You want a little bit of almost not being able to see. There's for things to sort of blur almost. And I think then the lighting applications for those things are different, because I think under harsh light we are very, very careful, and under softer lighting conditions we can be a little bit more vulnerable. So I think as humans, the way our bodies and I think a kind of psychological response to light happens is very unique, and I think light really helps in shaping it, but also in our personal environments we like to shape those lights based on our preferences.
Right.
I think it's biological also, in the sense that at different days, time of the day, you want different kind of light. Like right now, maybe when I know that it's daylight outside, I perhaps will feel claustrophobic in the same light. But if I was to chill completely and I was to go to a spa and want to have a massage, then maybe even this much of light will need to be dimmed. So it's a psychological response to what your state of mind is also. And I think that's the reason then when call centers happened, the architects had a big responsibility, the 24/7, that how that harsh light that was going to be there. And it affected the melatonin component of the body, because the melatonin is at its peak at night and lowest during the day, so that you're alert. So how did you counter that, and what kind of lighting was required, and how it affected you psychologically and also wellness wise? So I think that's the effect that lighting can have. Also, we have to differentiate somewhere between lighting and light. Light always to me is sunlight.
Yeah.
And we all know, you go to London, you go in summers and you go in winters, you want to run away from London, because it's so dark and dingy. It gets dark at 2:30, 3 o'clock, and you just don't want to be there. Go to the Scandinavian countries in winters, I feel, how do they survive? And there's a whole thing about the sunroom is
The sunroom, yeah.
Sunroom, new thing.
Sunroom, yeah, the effect is also there, and that's why today I think all the lighting that's being designed so good for us, in areas which don't get direct light or which don't need light with different temperatures, we can do those, replicate the sun, because also when you were talking about the emotional psychological aspect, you're also looking at light being able to give you the benefits of sun in terms of producing your ability to absorb D3 or produce D3, the vitamin D3, which is so essential for well-being. It's about, you feel depressed, so it's a whole gamut of what all lighting can do, and what lighting temperature and intensity of light, kind of light, reflected light, refracted light, whatever can do. So I think, very, very major role.
Okay, so this is like, there are so many aspects to lighting. In fact, I always wonder, as architects or interior designers, how do you balance the lighting from one corner of a room to a more open areas, to an intimate area, to a den? I mean, all of it in sync. How do you guys manage it? Kohelika, you want to take this?
Well, like Vivek said, there's light and then there's lighting. And I think the most important play, I think all of us, maybe not so much in bars, but at least in the residential world, in the hospitality world, is we try and focus on natural light first, and how we can take advantage of natural light, given the scenario, the environment we are building in. As far as artificial light comes in, we are blessed. There's so much research going on. You're talking about, I was reading this whole article about how you walk into a singular room and there's a questionnaire, it's a particular brand, there's a questionnaire that comes in of how you like your light. So they set your room, hotel room light, to when that particular person is arriving for 4 days. And then it's reset to the next guest who's coming. right? So it's not just in residential lighting, so much is happening in the world of hospitality because people are willing to spend the money for it and for the experience. We were having a chat, I think with Vikram, I said one of the first companies, hotels that started automation was the W.
Yeah.
And they were one of the first ones to, really play with how artificial light could really be exploited in a way. But for us, lighting is our fourth dimension. We can't do without it, whether that is light as a natural light or lighting.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's so key for all aspects of design.
So taking off from what you just said, so at what point do you incorporate lighting design when you start a project, even whether it's a large scale, institution or a government project or a smaller apartment or an interiors? At what point do you say, okay, I want to get into lighting design? Like where does it come?
Whenever you meet darkness, simple. No, it's actually,
I agree.
you get a space, as an architect, when I'm designing courtyards, when you are building row housing, the courtyards become the source of light. So I'm talking about light to begin with. Right. So that's the first daytime darkness that you meet. You want to illuminate all your rooms and everything, so you take care of that. When we get an office space to design, supposing we are doing interior, the first and foremost thing is that how can I call it, in my projects, I call it blasphemous to have a daylight during the day, any artificial light on. I say, no, this is not done. Whatever my ingress of light is, the natural light is the most important thing. So, then comes, during like projects in Delhi, where the daytime light is varying between 6:30 to 5:30 or 6:30 to 8:30 or 5:30 to 8:30. You need to calibrate your lighting, how the light comes in, what time does your light come in, artificial light come in, everything. So that's why I'm oversimplifying that whenever I meet darkness, I think of lighting solution. But what kind of lighting solution, what kind of project it is. So even in retail, like these guys do so much of retail, it's the product which dictates what is the color temperature, what kind of lighting is it going to, back in the days when I used to do retail, it used to be power lamps. We used to literally have them blasting on the mannequins and everything. There was no indirect lighting, So happy to see this kind of an indirect lighting that's happening now. Today I find, we used to have, I call this now, if I engage a lighting designer, I tell them, मुझे वो चॉल वाली लाइटें नहीं चाहिए, because वो छत पे, we used to have invariably. As an architect, even in my studio today, everybody puts light points. So I said, remove these damn things, I don't want to see walking past a building and see those lights, they could be uglier than sin. So I said, it's indirect lighting. You can light up your parasol, you can light up your chhajjas through indirect lighting. So I think it's you deal with different kind of luminaires, different intensity, different color temperature. From dimmable, now they've gone on to tunable. So what
both is possible now. I think tunable and dimmable,
right,
along with the automation also can be incorporated in that. That means automation, that means dimmable and all, but tunable in terms of the changing of the intensity from 3000 to 4000 to 7000 in one go.
So that's what Kohelika said, and I think it's a very, very valid point. Next opportunity that I get to design hospitality, I'm going to tell the client and sound very intelligent about it, Arman, that we will do this for your clients and earn some brownie points, but it's a very valid point.
So Rajat, I want to continue from where he took off. Within Amit Agrawal's store in Delhi, you worked on waving walls made of steel, a sculptural piece of course, and that also plays with light. So what was the process like? Can you tell us?
Well, so in fact, I want to continue something with what the discussion was going on earlier, because we also did Amit's store in Bombay,
Right.
and I think there we had this unique thing with with Amit's clothes. They are in all sorts of colors. You get them in the red end of the spectrum, and then you get them on the blue end of the spectrum,
Green as well.
and then the green also, and then you're trying to buy a very expensive special piece of garment, and you're trying most of these things in a room that's not naturally lit, and you're often trying these things in changing rooms where very little is thought of the kind of lighting you'd want to put in. So there we had to put in tunable lights, because there were some colored garments that wouldn't, like if you try to look at a blue one under a yellow light, it doesn't work. You try to look at a red one under a white light, it doesn't work. If you want to look at something green, then you need both. So, you know, there's kind of like a whole engineering of how to kind of bring out, because I think when you look good, when you look good to yourself, you also feel good, right? And when you're trying out an experiment like that, you want to do that. I think in his Delhi store with the waving walls, however, there was a different strategy, because we were looking at, the focus there was on kind of bedazzling the visitor and bedazzling kind of the you know, people who were coming to see the garments. And typically what happens in, say, you know, fashion retail is that you've got light on the garment, but then you also have a backlight which kind of gives it a bit of a glow. So what we did was that we created this lattice-like structure with curved planes, and then we lit it in a way so that it created this dazzle of lights because it's highly reflective. But also then each of those lattice structures, when lit, gave us a shadow, and it gave us, you know, reflections of the floor to work with. So I think the store in Delhi kind of feels like you're almost floating in water, and you know, you're being bedazzled by these things. But if you went to the Bombay store and tried something on, I'm sure you're going to love yourself wearing it.
You know, I learned a little bit of this when we were doing Nirav Modi store. That was the highest level of lighting, you know, because this much area, one diamond, which had to be looking like, you know, how, and that light source could never be seen. So the top of that box that we had a little light. I don't know whatever company that was, you would perhaps know. And that light was amazing, you know, because you never saw the source of light, and just completely dazzled you with the diamond firstly, and then on top of that the lighting effect. But yes, I mean, lighting can, you know, we study sciography, which is about the effect light can have, and we continue to, I think, harness the best out of our pictures, which show sciography of a pergola falling on a bloody thing at 12 o'clock, which may not hold true, but you know, the effect that the lighting gives, whether daylight or this kind of light, is the most mesmerizing thing. It adds to the, like Koilika said, the fourth dimension of a space.
But I just wanted to add that according to color temperature, so even the sun has the complete spectrum from you know, the least possible color temperature to the maximum. But you're able to see all the colors, whether it be warm light or you know, whiter light. You're always able to see the reds for reds and even the whites for whites. But I think that's only to do with the color rendition of any product, or the earlier what people used to follow. What I mean.
But I think there is, the golden hour exists for a reason.
Absolutely. You know, all photographers' delight is that.
Oh man,
Yeah.
4 o'clock.
Yeah.
We're
4
like,
o'clock
be at
light
the
is
side.
perfect.
Be at side.
Photographers delight, Instagrammers delight.
I know,
man.
absolutely.
Dude, the project looks different. I mean, you can't believe it's your own project during the golden
In fact,
hour.
you won't believe, of late, I mean, it's something very off the record, but normally if we ask for projects, we now feel the need that we need to give a SOP, that don't doctor it too much, don't you know, enhance it more than necessary,
Yeah.
because sometimes it is becoming very difficult to understand what just happened, you know, across the images. There's this one flat lighting, and anyhow. So coming to you, Hariman, I really wanted to know about the Taj project. Can you tell us Taj Mahal project and tell us how was it, you know, illuminating it?
So basically, we were working on the east gate entrance of the Taj Mahal. So the uniqueness about that project was we wanted to cut down on the number of fixtures we were using. So we placed like bollards which were about 750 mm high and at an interspace of 7.5 meters, and the stretch was about 15 meters wide. And we had scattered it. The most important thing was the maintenance goes lesser because you have lesser number of fixtures to maintain. The entire you know, cost of running the electricity and everything is also less. So it overall makes it a more sustainable project. You see lesser number of elements in your facade. You're just seeing the effect of lighting, like everyone was mentioning. You don't want to see too many fixtures. You would just want to see the play of light happening on the floor. And we created a sort of a pattern with a uniformly lit area also, so that you had enough light to view things and passerbys in the evening as well. So that was something very unique that we had done.
When did you do this?
This was in 2016.
When we
Yeah.
Which is why I was curious to know they have done Modera also, but
Mudera Sun Temple was another one.
I was at Modera just last week and
Yeah.
I didn't stay. I didn't know. I just did a tour.
Because unfortunately, most of the monuments lit in this city,
They're not the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
less said about them is probably.
So, Rajat, I have the next question for you. How has your design philosophy is inspired by nature? I mean, nature has been your guiding inspirations. Informed your approach towards lighting. You tell me a little bit about how do you put the nature and text together so beautifully.
That's very sweet of you to say, but I think so. The company that we run it is called OR Project, and OR is the Hebrew word for light. And I think
What project?
OR.
Odd.
It's
Or-
a word for light.
And or is the Hebrew word for light. So I think from the very beginning, I think everybody in the studio, we've always felt very connected to expressing light in our work. I think many years ago we did this installation that we made with photochromic plastic, and what this did was that it was suspended in a courtyard in Milan, and when the sunlight hit the surface of the photochromic panels, they turned blue, and then basically the sun's pattern around the courtyard would get kind of mapped on how deep blue the installation kind of glowed, and then at night it would kind of turn back into kind of white. We've also recently exhibited this work called Coral, wherein, because architecturally we're interested in biomimetics, so very often we are looking at how to study nature and kind of turn that into some sort of architectural form. And
Do you still have that tree at your house?
not anymore, we
Oh, okay.
recycle that, but
Okay.
I think you've seen that one.
Yeah.
So I think we've always had this thing, none of our projects have lights integrated into it, like it's almost like the project doesn't exist without the light. So for this installation called Coral that we did, it consisted of 3 pieces of coral that kind of created a coral reef, and they were built in paper. And you know how corals are like the most colorful beings on the planet, and due to climate change, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia got bleached and all the corals lost color and turned white. So, using all sorts of kind of crazy LED fixtures, we managed to recreate, the whole gamut of different colors that exist in nature and this installation. And then every time somebody would go too close to it, the lights would go off and it would turn white, and you'd only see the white of the paper. So I think, like, for me, in my practice, light and form and biomimetics and nature all sort of, they're intertwined. They're not like one applied as a layer on top of the other, but like is essential to what the piece really is.
Right. I wanted to ask you, Kuhelika, as an architect and a carpenter, how do you define the relationship between your craft and light? And your spaces always has this one, beautiful
Peace. Yeah.
piece of light, like that literally becomes the center. And a lot of time the design sort of moves around it. But how do you
For
navigate?
me, I like, so for anything, well, I mean, one is very architecture is a different scale, and then,
Do you hear her? I think a mic needs to be.
Can you hear me?
I
We
can.
can, but yeah.
Maybe you can put it a little
Yeah.
closer.
Sure. Can you hear me now? Okay, all right. So obviously architecture is at one scale, and then, carpentry is at another scale. But when I'm doing most of my projects, what I like to do is I think what happens, so lighting is at many levels, right? I mean, you spoke about it. I mean, it's not just about the type of light, but also light design. Lighting is about layering. And what I like to do is I like to make this connection between the ceiling and the floor. And that's why we tend to take decorative lighting to a different level, because we try and do these installs which make you feel the presence of the entire space rather than just the space to a particular island. So it's really about creating that constant dialogue between, even when you're sitting on a sofa, you see a beautiful light. It's really about that. That's on a space level. In terms of, I recently sent you something I made in Bali in 5 days, and as you know, I shot that in complete natural light. This was a rocking chair made out of bamboo. And so it changes, right? How you feel a texture, because I love materiality and I love textures even when I'm working on furniture pieces. And lighting does that for you. It allows you to enhance what you wanted to enhance. So it becomes so important when working. I think somebody who loves working with texture, and you talked about flat photos. I mean, I have to say, one is the lighting, but I also have to say we have a very limited number of great photographers. So
to kind of add to that, okay, so over the weekend we were in Bangkok with this Michelin group. Okay, they had called us, and then we were sitting down, and these guys, the chefs are there, and then they had a story, right? They're like, look at this volume. There is a light at the top. There is a light on the wall. Then there is a light which is and that is what they call it a Michelin star restaurant, because then you don't need light anywhere. It's just the last point of view is a 3-degree angle scape of light falling on your food and you're eating it. Not even the cutlery needs to be, looked at. So I think there's so much to learn in lighting, and I think the way lighting is kind of approaching, it's actually crazy. Like, gone are those days when, I used to be like really small and go with dad, and then they'll have a light fixture which was like your Nokia's, 7210s or whatever, right? Remember? And then now the lighting is like, the other day I saw this light, like a 1-inch light, and it was doing the same work what a 3-inch or a 4-inch light would do. And I'm like, what is the illuminance? It's like, this is also 3 watt, that is also 3 watts. So of course things are changing rapidly, so it's crazy to see that, honestly.
Stay here. And in fact, in many projects at Renaissance, shapes and decorative elements have been enhanced through lighting. We spoke about it. I wanted to know, recently in the Seema Gujarat space, which has the arches and vaulted walkways, how did the light, how did you plan the light around that?
Well, you know what? Seema was very intelligent. She wanted to actually make a store where she would do her shoots as well. If a fashion show comes in, she will save money on the fashion shows as well.
They're all the same.
All the same, right? So, with all due respect. But, and then came the problem of how to represent different occasions. That is your mehendi area. I know everything about weddings now. A mehendi area, a cocktail area, then a sari sharara area, and then a men's area, right?
Wow.
Right, look at me. And then the illuminance of the light also changes according to how the typical occasion changes. So a cocktail can be a very dim lit space with the light just falling on the shimmery stuff that the guys do, because they want to kind of expose the shimmer only to the people. So you'll have one light kind of falling like a beam of light on the clothes in the cocktail, but in the sari sharara area, which can be worn at any time by the apparent crowd. So that has to be a little like chill in terms of light, like ambient lighting going on. Then in the shadi area, which is majorly the glittery stuff as well as the red and the tones of red that goes predominantly, she told me to kind of have like more lighting. And by more lighting, I mean the whole space was filled with all these, drop lights kind of falling on her clothes. Going back to the men's area where she had, a neutral face to the light. So I think within that, in the middle, if you could see, was a courtyard, right? And that is where she wanted the fashion show to happen, along with the courtyard and the arched walkways to kind of go about it. So how the lights were changing, actually the lights were changing from 2700 to 4000 to 4500 within the space, but you don't get to know because you're experiencing different, honestly I learned a lot about clothes, honestly, because they're like, if you can weave an architecture space, we also weave smaller, like smaller items altogether. So there's so much science that goes at their end and you have to match it to your end and kind of come to a middle ground. I think
Here I thought, running a magazine was the toughest job. Really?
No.
Well, so Vivek and Anirban, I wanted to touch upon sustainability because I feel the conversations are happening enough, but I want to know in terms of lighting technology, where are we heading? So, what role does sustainability play when it comes to lighting design? Are there options or any new technologies that you want to share with?
So I think it's more to do with how you utilize the fixtures, how you perceive the layout, what the importance of light in that particular situation is. If you want to accent, if you want to just generally illuminate, what layers are you trying to utilize? Based on that, I don't think it's to do a lot with wattages anymore. It's more to do with the control of optics. It's more to do with the quality of light. I know a lot of people talk about material selection outside versus material selection under, like an LED downlight in a showroom. It's extremely different, but nowadays, like, there's newer fixtures that are coming in which are closer to sun-like effect, wherein we're not just talking about a color rendering index, but we're talking about a TM30 standard, which is a more evolved version of color rendering index, because color rendering index is just a spectrum of 10 to 15 colors once it kept getting upgraded back in the 1900s. TM30 standards is a spectrum of 100 different colors, because like all of your mentioning, you guys use a lot of texture, material, colors. So even identifying two different tones of blue in a light inside is different as compared to how you would perceive outside. So I think it's more to do with the focus of using the right light, the right optics, not overly lighting everything up, because at the end of the day, in India, you always have a lot of natural light, and you guys use a lot of natural light in your projects as well. So the only time you need it is during the evenings when you want to just unwind and relax.
Good point. For me, it's a big gamut of how sustainable.
Work across scales.
Yeah.
So the scale better.
No, not just from that point. I told you, as far as possible, obviously, the biggest way of sustainable is to use natural light. So, so then the other would be, how much you are consuming in terms of lighting, how much energy are you consuming, how sustainable are you as far as the consumption of light is concerned. I think that's being also helped by simple tricks like automation, motion detectors and everything. Areas that are not being used can remain unlit, and the moment you get them into use. So that's a way of. There could be another dimension of the lighting fixtures becoming themselves very, very sustainable. We all know that whatever glass which is silica, if you break, you can fire it, and whatever you can blow it and you can use it. So that's another way.
So actually, this one is all refurbished and repurposed glass that you're seeing.
That's exactly what I'm saying. So
this piece, yeah.
I was very impressed by this new lighting. I wasn't sure what it was. I checked with them. Nowadays, Ollie or somebody is doing these fabric lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know exactly.
Ollie.
I'm very bad with brands or something like that, excepting my own name. So it was about that fabric, which is the most sustainable way of doing. And they also have a thing of repurposing. So when you get, at home, like we buy these fancy lamps which have invariably a cloth, the shade.
Yeah.
Is that shade? We call that shade only.
Shade.
Yeah. And after some time, it gets dirty or something, and you don't know what to do. So you can repurpose that. You can, send it back to them. They would give you, and there's a completely new look. Then you change from pink to blue, or you change from white to another texture or something. So that's another sustainable way of consumption of the lighting product itself, which can be made. What product are you using? If you're using a recyclable, how much of, I'm from Chandigarh, studied there, so Nekchand, how you could use material which was discarded material, create light which could not just be, as a product designer, be a product itself, and also illuminate things like that. So I think, to me, it works at various levels, from product to usage to natural light to also producing light. To me, the biggest success as an architect for my larger projects is when I can illuminate my projects without anything, which is, so all our Leh Ladakh projects are completely, the harnessing solar energy, like how, I can actually, I'm putting it back on the grid. Leh is the best example of how you have sun 365 days, literally up until the time that we were working there, it was 365 days. Then suddenly vegetation has happened, people have started putting grass, and suddenly the cloud burst has started happening, so you don't get so many clear days. But yeah, so you produce energy. I would be, when I travel and I see the new expressway, which is unlit at most parts, I feel, why couldn't we, the number of cars that are driving past, we could have these mini turbines which is by the road. You could generate some kind of electricity, you could generate some kind of which would be used, stored, and then used at night, so that the entire expressway could be lit for nothing at all. So that's sustainable to me.
Have you heard what Coldplay does?
Yeah.
Any of you know her?
Yeah.
I mean,
Please tell.
so every
sticks.
time he has these performances and events, right, he's gone into this whole segment of how you can perform for large audiences, but in a very sustainable way.
Manner.
So he has these, so the floors that people dance and pump on are creating electricity.
It's called kinetic energy,
Yeah.
which is what is producing electricity. Fantastic, yeah.
So I mean, it's lots of it. But I mean, I'm going to be completely outrageous and say something. I think that, I don't know about your mega projects, but as far as hospitality is concerned, at least the little bit I'm in, and the residential market, sustainability is a hoax, because it all depends on budget. I mean, I try and convince a client that, listen buddy, you take this light and you take that light and you put it 15 feet away, but each fixture will cost you 40,000 versus putting 7 lights in the same space, and the client will think, "Hum 7 light laga dete hain."
So,
But
so
the
this is
issue
what
is-
I wanted to ask you, that how do you, come in the picture to, so that users or anybody can make an informed choice. Like, where do you get involved and how can you make it better?
No, we get.
So we try to get involved right from whenever the concept is frozen, so that, because see, even wherein you're going to place the light, what kind of detailing you would need. If you have artwork coming, we need like certain areas. Sometimes people want more vertical illumination to add more depth to the space as well, if a space is smaller. So we need to be involved at a much earlier stage, so that we can discuss and explain like what detailing we would require as well. There's an intent that architects and designers have, and then there's a way we try to make that happen through the use of different products and different options that we have. The only reason why I would say, okay, I know the client usually says that we'll take 7 lights instead of 2 lights, but when you're actually, for a residential application, when a person is living there, they're spending their time and effort in terms of texture selection, material selection, even the slightest color variation, stone, and if you just do something like this, it interferes firstly with the ceiling, also to replace the fixtures. It's a huge hassle, just the overall maintenance of the entire project. Then the number of, because I would be using the same wattage but 2 fixtures, but the other person might be using the same wattage, 7 fixtures. No. I was.
How do you guys
so-
convince the user, the
I'm on your
homeowner?
side.
I'll tell you, the best way to convince them is just tell them that Vastu requires it. And I swear, they will buy anything.
Last you said itne artificial light
Yeah,
nahi hone
yeah,
chahiye.
yeah, yeah. No, but I think when you're kind of using it Vastu-wise, you're designing a building, automatically the scientific way it kind of approaches a building in a residential, you get natural light in every room and ventilation. So that is where I call it efficiency as well. So there's a scientific reasoning regarding a Vastu as well, but then you save a lot of cost as well.
What I'm saying is sustainability seems to be like the vogue word word since
Yeah.
It is a
Fair
word.
enough.
No, it's
Fair
been
enough.
there for longer, but in
No, but
reality,
it's in vogue for last
Yeah,
years.
I totally agree with
every
her.
company, everybody is talking about it.
It's a loosely
But
used
actually
statement.
nothing sustainable. That,
Yeah.
I mean, I hear people talk about sustainability. I'm looking at them and I'm like, are you kidding me? Like seriously.
No, I mean, doing mud faska over a concrete building is not sustainability, right?
so, that's why
So
I'm
sustainability actually needs a separate
Separate.
discussion altogether.
I don't think it's.
I've noticed this in the last, like I'm not complete, the thoughts aren't completely developed in my mind, but I've noticed that buildings have a lifespan.
Yeah.
You know, like we built how a lot of Delhi houses were built in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they were all broken down in the 90s, 2010, 2015. Essentially, I think the average lifespan of a Delhi house is probably not more than 35 to 40 years. Most people would break their house down and make it again, to either, take advantage of being able to build 4 floors or, something like this. But then I think that from a sustainable perspective, we'll have to start looking at, okay, given that's the lifespan, what do we do with all the products we've used to make the building with? What happens when we knock down a building? What happens to all the waste materials that kind of come out of it? The electricals that come out of the wiring that comes out of it? Can some of it be reused to make the new building? Like in Switzerland, for example, 70% of new construction requires that you use recycled, reclaimed materials in the, whatever you're building new these days. But every time we do it, we make everything with bricks and concrete, then we break it down, we make it again with bricks and concrete, then we break it down. And Bombay also, right, like what's happening right now is that people thought, okay, we'll build a housing building that's maybe 10 floors high, and then it'll be sold to 50 people, and nobody will be pulling this down and changing it. But now what's happening in Bombay, that those 5-10 floor buildings, they're being pulled down and being replaced with 30 floor buildings or 40 floor buildings. So I think the sustainability in architecture would have to come in with how long can we use the same building, because the buildings don't last very long between the waterproofing and the termite and India is a very harsh climate, right? And it has an impact on the materials we use. So I think if we can make buildings that last longer, or we can recycle the materials we use to make them today, I think that's probably the only way we're looking at sustainability. Otherwise, it's just one-way consumption.
It's fair.
It's a fact.
But I feel like it's also a hoax because, okay, if you're trying to recycle something, if we just take something as simple as a plastic bottle, you will be sending all these bottles somewhere to a factory to get recycled. The amount of gas you're wasting in terms of doing all of that, you waste about 30 to 40%. So it's a lot of greenwashing
Lately,
going
I've
on
seen the
in
Malba
today's day and
project.
age.
There's this group called the Malba Project, which have started making these bricks out of all the waste material that's going in, and of course, like Collective is also doing that in Bangalore. So what they've done is they've actually put these plastic polymers which can illuminate on themselves. So lighting also is a part of the brick culture that's coming through. So there's so much interesting ways of kind of approaching, and also that culture of kind of creating the brick out of the waste has its own color, material, fabric, or the texture that they have. I think it's beautiful in itself as a new material altogether to kind of cater to, and I think it's a material for the future, honestly.
Like we took 9 kilos of plastic bottles out of the Pacific and 3D printed a chair. Sure, we had to send it to a factory. Sure, we had to send a boat out to get it.
But there would be some sort of waste
But what I'm saying is we
material as well.
managed to get
it's
it
all
out of
about
the ocean.
waste
Right?
management, otherwise where will you pile up all the waste? So it's not about that. It's more about how you manage that waste. Today, like, just now we're talking about the building waste. That look at Gurgaon, it's strewn the whole road entire.
Oh, I wanted to talk about that specific building when you entering from the toll to
lighting, right?
the lighting. No. I am talking about the lighting. I'm talking specifically about lighting, and this is that building on the left that you see. It's a building by DLF. And it has,
Is it DLF downtown?
oh my God, the amount of lighting
That's
downtown.
like crazy.
Like,
Not
That's
here. You're talking about the one on the right.
on the
No,
left.
on the left.
No,
On the
that's
left.
that
The
air
one on
conditioning.
the-
it's like every day is a
What's along
Diwali out
that?
there. Honestly,
This
it
is
feels like
downtown.
Diwali every day.
It's called
Changes
downtown.
color.
It's
No,
called down.
it doesn't change color. It has so much of light.
So we did that project, but we weren't the lighting
Oh, I am
designers
so
for the
sorry.
So that
project.
was with
We,
RPOP you did.
no, there was already a lighting consultant involved in the project. We just supplied the luminaires, and initially, actually, they had a challenge wherein
Did
they
you
didn't
not
have.
fight with them in terms of
See,
the
the
wastage?
intent was not mine. There
No,
was an
fair
international
enough.
lighting consultant involved, an international architect. There was an Indian team as
So
well.
they get a
who were
license. When you are
handling, so-
international, you get a license. I better
So-
start going and
Coming
working in
back
Sri
to
Lanka.
lighting
Yeah.
and still staying on sustainability, do you see any sustainable technological advances that have happened in lighting design that you want to share?
I think.
Something simple, because our audiences are students, and I think we can also keep them in mind and tell.
I think the simplest way to be more sustainable in lighting is by optimization of the layout. Knowing where you want the light, what beam angles you want, instead of using maybe two fixtures, using one, using products which will last longer as
Totally
well.
agree.
You know, I think only these are the factors that will make it more sustainable according to current scenario right now. But later on, like I know there's a lot of research and all going on, but when the products will actually be available, right now the biggest thing that happened in the lighting industry was when we shifted from the incandescent light sources
LED.
to the LED light sources. So the only way to move beyond is probably a different light source, because we're already working on control of optics, the color quality, and so on. Lesser wattage as well, so lesser power consumption as
Yeah,
well.
that I thought was bigger than just the number of luminaires.
Exactly.
The bigger is power consumption, because we are always going to be power deficit in this country. I mean, despite the fact that we produce so much.
As in all of you work on a larger capacity in large firms, do you always have a consultant on lighting part of your projects, or you guys practically have to deep dive into each and then
Completely your call. I mean, I'm, as it is, very non-collaborative kind of a human in terms of my work. I'm extremely,
But
I
like
take
honestly,
ownership of
like
everything
we
that I'm doing, yeah.
initially, I think it is a case of experience. The more you dwell into a typology of work that you do, be it residential, be it hospitality, the more you get into it, the more you understand where all lights are needed, how much you. And I think to explain it to a consultant is even an insane experience. And then if the consultant can add back to you in terms of the newness of new products, I think that is where you need the consultant. In terms of knowing.
This is like we all want good PMCs,
Yeah.
but
none of them are
Find it.
we end up being the PMC.
Yeah, so
Yeah, that's
exactly.
true.
Yeah, that's exactly the case. It's like
So I think that's where Arvind told us, right? Like if there's a newness or a new product coming through, how can we kind of add that to the whole, layouting in terms of different typologies of work you do? And I think explain, like if you can explain it well, and if they can explain it back to you, but to kind of answer your question, you might or might not or might need it. So it's a sort of a dubious situation.
So, Arman, how far are we from the fact that, tomorrow all your luminaires will get connected to one sun catcher? I'm calling that. No, it's a direct transfer of, instead of storing your energy in the battery, then releasing it. The day is not far when you will have one pod over there, which will also have the batteries. And when you switch it on, it will not use your grid. It will use that. I think that is the next big thing that you guys should work on, and that's the easiest thing I feel, because it's there. It's there.
I think it's started to happen already.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. If you're first off the block saying that this is how my lights work, then what your first question was, what is it as a product designer and architect, apart from aesthetics, what your luminaire can do. I'm not going to put a speaker here, basically that dome could actually have a speaker, so you can say that my light also has a speaker or a Wi-Fi, whatever booster or something, What else can you do? Light is supposed to illuminate, it will do that. But if you can do that, the transfer of the entire technology, that will be the day, and that will be between the product designer and everybody together, an architect and a lighting designer doing that.
But
to the industry.
I think to kind of add to that, I think as an architect also and an interior designer as well, I practice both. I think the beauty is how can you kind of capture light through your architecture and take it into interiors.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think it's the most beautiful feeling. Your clients won't understand that, but the buildings will look, like there will be shapes and sizes left, right, center, but then they end up until unless they not experience it, they will not understand it. So I think that's the beauty of it.
I have two questions before we open into the audience for more questions. So, I'm not a big fan of word trend, but I would still, can you share some lighting trend or technique that you feel is currently particularly exciting and then one should know about it that none of us would be aware of? Anybody, any lighting?
I think the simplest way would be just layering your lights. That's about it. It's just the way you layer the entire lighting layout that makes it very different. So creating those focal points, understanding what you want, how you want to guide the user through the space or through the experience, through the use of light. I think that's the only important aspect that we typically tend to use lighting in our projects.
But I have to say, I'm not a trend person.
I know, which is why I already.
But which is what is trending is what Rajat is talking about, because where the light source is, you no longer want to see it.
Yeah.
Where the speaker is, you no longer want to see
The
it.
seamlessness.
Yeah. You want to. There is a drive, I think, which I think a lot of us also appreciate, which creates this minimalistic approach to design.
To add to that anti-glare factor. I mean, of course, and there's this new phenomena in the hospitality industry that I've been seeing lately. These new clubs have been incorporating this called digital multiplex, that is called the DMX.
DMX.
Oh my God! Wow. The lighting plays along the beats of the music.
Yeah. It's been there for a bit now.
It's been there, but it's improving every year.
It's been there from our time.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
संचित के साथ ऐसे बोलना चाहिए.
But I think as a
And
designer,
okay, it's been there from our time. Okay.
Yeah, is it?
Yeah.
I mean,
But there's a lot happening for pool lights.
yeah, pool lights as well.
There's a lot happening there. Nobody wants to swim against sharp lights. I mean, fiber optics have been in for a while, but also how the color temperature of the water changes, the sort of lighting. So there's.
And now one bit.
I am excited. I am excited about the sunroom thing because I'm currently using it. Some typical solutions that you come out with, because this client in Jaipur, and I hardly ever do homes. This is for somebody we are doing some large buildings and all. So his home we were doing, and in Jaipur he's not a jeweler, but he's a banker. He runs a bank. So their dressing rooms were to have no light at all. No light meaning no natural light, no opening. And I said, how do you deal with how many lights I can put wall grazers for? So then the sunroom thing has come about.
No, that is the stretch fabric.
So
right? That is stretch fabric.
This is
Barisol stretch fabric.
No, so Barisol is different from the sunroom. The sunroom is giving.
So basically, there are multiple products. I don't know much about sunroof, but we also have this one brand that's been doing this back from 1990s. The entire concept is not about lighting it from the back, but lighting it from the side. And they're the masters of illuminating different materials. So if you think out of the box, if you suppose have only veneer walls and you want to illuminate that with a backlit effect, so they use light guide technology. So they have a laser engraving, laser engraved tile and a strip light on the side, which uniformly illuminates and gets you the uniform lux level throughout the board. So you don't have to necessarily just light up acrylic. You can light up veneer, marble, different stones.
Lighting up the space.
You can make like a window also out of it.
So the exciting part is that you can choose your garment, you can choose the shade of lipstick, and also know that when you're wearing this garment during the day, this is so you can actually simulate the temperature, color temperature of the time of the day, and you're going out for the party. So despite being in a dark room, you can do that. I'm excited about
so
that.
color tunability is something I think that exists with majority of even fabric stretch ceilings and so on. I think the concept is the same, having like a daylight sort of an effect.
Just to give you an example, I have all my restaurants that I've designed on my app right now to set their time-based lighting whenever they call me. They're like, please, abhi vibe nahi aa rahi, can you call me, please? And then So I do that. I just do that. Tuck, 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 tuck. And
the
I don't
vibe
even know.
is back.
Yeah. Then like at 11 o'clock, I'm getting a call, or 12 o'clock at night. Then I'm like, I'm sleeping. It's like, can you set the vibe back? And I just push one button and it's done. I mean, I'm sleeping at my home and then I'm doing it. I'm setting the light because I've set the different sort of vibe, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock,
I think
12 o'clock.
that's an interesting point because I think there is an industry. Huh?
Yeah. I was like, you better pay me now. You know, I mean, yeah.
I think there's an industry standard to, like say the different color temperatures, about 3000 Kelvin, 2700, 4000, etc., etc. But I think at the end of the day, what we see, like what all of us see, is actually entirely different, like the way we see things in our brain. And so it's very difficult to convince a client that something is right when they don't feel or see in their sense it's right. And I think at that level, I think the possibilities of LED lights for them to be able to customize them for different users to the kind of white light they want or to the kind of yellow light they want, that might not be, I don't know, 3000 Kelvin, but 2785 Kelvin. But if that feels right for them,
How much salt in your
I think
food?
that those kind of adjustments are
No, but like these presets can only be identified by an architect or a designer.
And
You know,
again-
when he feels like,
And again,
this is the balance.
Remember we were talking about this thing, so I made something called a disco light once, which is basically the light that changes color with the music. And then I realized that if you look at the color spectrum, like the Vibgyor spectrum, there is a standard Vibgyor spectrum of RGB of what VIB, GYOR is. But then there is something that's visually appealing violet, visually appealing green, visually appealing other colors. So I think designing the color itself from a designer perspective is where I think you can make the light go beyond than just the technical piece that it is.
Right. So I have one last question. So I often notice in homes that we have featured in Eldecor, or we see the homes, I have very rarely seen artwork or a sculpture well lit. Like, I just feel like, even I come from a fine arts school, and in my college, we used to have displays at the end of the year, but the gallery lighting was never the right, it was never the light right. So I wanted to understand, any of you can tell me, like, how is it that you light a simple artwork in your home?
I think, to kind of answer to that, I think I've been doing a lot of research on that specifically, because that's typically you call it the heat burn or whatever, light burn, you call it the burn.
When you have too much exposure.
Yeah. So burn is a usual phenomena that happens on artworks. Also, to cater to that, in galleries they kind of have a glass on the artwork which kind of throws the light back, right? So to kind of cater to that, I think what is now actually happening is that there are anti-glare, tiltable, all these.
Glass and acrylic.
I mean, you can have a sort of a glass shielding or cutter. They call it a cutter. The
So
glass cutter.
anti-glare shield.
Yeah. So I think that is the thing. But then also to kind of increase the luminance through one or two. You don't need more lights to kind of, depends on the artwork as well. But then it is a very difficult task. But then I think there can be more sort of shielding aspects or sort of a screening aspects on the source of light to kind of cater to we call it the Punjabi mein sondhi light. Like that's what my dad says. I need sondhi light. So that's what I have not been able to achieve.
My sister's an art curator,
Yeah.
and so I moonlight as an exhibition designer sometimes. And last year we did this show for Dior and the Chanakya school in Bombay, where there were these massive textiles that we had to kind of put up. And I think that the curatorial aspect of showing art is very important. I think that if you have art in your house and you just put a light on it, it's not going to do it. Even if it's well lit, evenly lit, so on. I think unless there is a curatorial idea of what you want to highlight, even within an artwork, right? Suppose you want to take the viewer's eye to a part of the subject's detail, or you want to take the viewer and can almost like help the background disappear. I mean, there are many things depending on what kind of artwork you're trying to illuminate.
But lately at MoMA and Mocha, like in Bangkok also there's Mocha, you know what they've done is that there's a layer of lighting, that is architectural lighting happening, but in the middle they've started doing the stretch parasol ceilings.
So what they do is that they do the daylight through that,
Yeah.
and then the focus light through kind of,
Okay,
you know, the focus
that
light.
is the level of lightings to kind of achieve that illuminance of ambient lighting happening through this.
But I think in houses, what one needs to do is sort of different. You need to kind of curate the artwork to the space. You know what I mean? Like in a art gallery, it's different. You want very even, very kind of correct
What
light
you're perhaps
condition.
speaking about is more like a museum or a gallery. like
But I think in the house
But
it's
at
more.
home, I think what I have discovered is that when there is a simple lighting that you need, is deep palmettes really help, because you know your art is on the wall. I'm not talking about sculptures, but art is on the wall, and when you don't want to have that burn effect on a particular portion of that
Distance.
art, if you want to uniformly light,
Distance matters from the wall.
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. The height and then the opening. How much is the opening?
The
How it's
beam
getting
angle.
diffused? It just works like a charm to me. And then the sculptures are always generally lit with this very small,
dim
thing which
beam light.
is focusing on the sculpture. It really works well as long as there's never a glare. But that's recently, you know, again, new learnings. We experimented and we
There is a
did.
curatorial approach that you mentioned, but that would also apply. This is how would you, when you do things that
Actually,
Residents.
we get, when we're talking about lighting, you know, people think that art and artifacts are bought at the end of the project.
Sure.
This is
there you go.
It's bought during the life of the project. And a lot of clients we design for already own certain. So people like Ariman come in much earlier on our projects when we're still talking about structure, because we are already thinking about which wall is going. I mean, we did the Pajaria residence where the owner is a gallery owner, right?
Yeah.
Now we knew the pieces she was going to put on those walls. In fact, some of the walls were built for the art. Right? So, and then at that point, someone like an Ariman is already in there talking about, okay, this is it, this is the texturing, this is the support, how are we going to light this thing, you know? So for us, it's a, but you know what? All of this is amazing to talk about, but at the end of the day, it all comes down to budget, because unfortunately, our clients don't see it the same way. I've seen people light up Razas and Hussains in the most horrendous
There you go.
possible
This
way.
is where
And I'm thinking to myself,
I think it all
this
comes
thing
down to
runs into
romanticizing.
walls, but you don't have the sense to
True.
spend money on an 80,000 rupee light.
Right.
Right? So, or anti-glare glass, or you know,
Yeah,
Translucent glass.
reflective
Spend
acrylic
so
or
much on
whatever.
painting.
So sometimes I think we all at some stage lose the battle,
Right.
because we all have to say, okay,
Not my
guys,
house.
Okay. On that note,
I just hope I'm going to get a good picture out of that.
discussion for our audience.
Do the shoot picture.
Questions? Any questions?
Anyone would like to ask any questions, any insights, anything you'd like to discuss?
Okay, sorry, I asked a question, right? So, we were talking about artwork, we were talking about things, right? Don't you feel it's very important when you have artwork? Forget the quality of light, source of light, everything. Artwork, I guess, is very important to see where you place your light, what is the angle that is falling at. We were talking about the reflection that is coming and bouncing up. It's all to do with places, isn't it?
Sure.
So if you have the placements right, and as you rightly said, if you have the person who's doing the lighting right from the word go, it's very easy. I do understand budgets, very critical. You do the best of the things as architect, but then eventually everything goes to a cost. So somewhere down the line, I think probably the onus falls back on you to try and kind of explain the clients what difference does lighting make, or you know, kind of eventually, because I think you guys will have all the ears when you're talking to the client.
I like how it's always the architect.
Pardon?
I like it how it's
Even when
always the
PMC is not
architect.
performing, it's
Yeah.
still the architect.
I do understand. You were the last hope, I would say.
Yeah, true.
You're not the only hope. If the client can't understand you, forget it, he's not going to understand anything.
So, you know, like when we work with vendors, for the thing is, for a client to make a choice, right? I mean, from an architect's perspective, I've got to present something to the client wherein the client feels they are making a choice. So, for instance, if it comes to light fixtures, and I feel that a certain value will be added to the space by investing in the right kind of light fixture, then I need to give them options, you know, something at one end of the spectrum, and something at the other end.
Business requires a lot more transparency,
Yeah.
which doesn't exist. It's
Which
not
doesn't
just
exist,
about
yeah.
lighting. It's just the whole business of architecture.
True.
It requires a hell of a lot more transparency if you really want to have that relationship with your client.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Europe has a lot more of it. India doesn't. And I think it's unfair, very frankly, because I think
the
Yo.
same amount of light, same thing, someone gets you. You give an X amount, and then suddenly there is an X pops out, which is like 70% or 80% downgraded version of it. Same thing, doing the same thing. I
but
totally
it
agree.
happens not only in product, right? It happens in our business of architecture.
Yeah,
You
true.
will go to fee for X, someone else will go to fee to Y, and you're trying to see, really logically thinking, I've done my numbers, we're all hiring from the same pool.
Yeah.
There's no way this project can suffice at a fee structure like this. So, I mean, it's a. But what was the question then?
So the question was this: that how do you try and convince your client?
Well, we get people like you up on stage and try and talk to them, but unfortunately, the thing is, the client is.
That's the most unfortunate
You know,
part.
the client.
Sorry, I didn't get it.
You don't understand what happens to us, right? A client walks in with 10 Pinterest images and says, "Mujhe ye
Gosh,
चाहिए."
that's the
Right?
I-
Firstly, you know,
No, you're very right.
it's like my business partner's not here today, but she will say, turn around and say to you, don't attend that first meeting because you say, आपको ये चाहिए और मुझे चाहिए कि आप वो दरवाजे तक बाहर चले जाएं. Because I'm not interested in copying a Pinterest.
Yeah, and I
So
know you
we
get a
have, so by the
Pinterest.
time we come to fight for your lives, a lot of us are out of fuel here.
Yeah,
But you know, there is a whole plethora of homes now they all look alike, they all have the Pinterest zone, and there are so many of more happening on those lines,
Yeah,
which
you
is,
would
which
know
is,
much more.
which is worrisome.
Yes,
There is a set pattern, there is a template. In fact, there are artworks
Maybe
also,
that's sustainable.
which are
Yeah.
Pinterest
Cookie
inspired,
cutter.
and then you will see literally the change of 10%, and you'll see the
And
same.
now there's another AI which is this way.
Okay, then we don't get another discussion for
I
AI.
tried this out. I tried doing lighting design with AI. So yeah.
How did it go? Is it better than having writing design?
No comments.
I mean, you still need to feed a lot of data to kind of for it to understand. But yeah, I mean, eventually, I guess.
But I want to say one thing. Where I have succeeded, where not each time, but where I feel I succeeded is when I actually tell the vendor, you know what, we're doing a trial. Please get 6 of your fixtures. Please put them up at site. Please leave them for 1 week. And you know this. So we got 3 different vendors putting up 3 different types of lights.
Totally
That's
agree.
the only
Totally,
way.
that's the only way.
we're
That's the only way.
experiencing them and we being able to
Yeah.
tell them this.
That's helpful.
That's the only thing
I
I
think
find
that's- yeah.
makes
But
the
only
job.
is that in a
There's choices
bare
you
shell
give them and
area,
then they
or
decide.
does that have some sort of textures or
It
materials
has textures and
underneath?
materials.
I
No,
know
nothing
clients
about
understand the importance of these markups because this is another question.
100%.
Very right.
100%.
You're very right. You know, the importance of markup is very important. I mean, I feel it's a very important part, right? But do the clients understand this?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
I don't want to name some people
No,
who
yeah.
are extremely wealthy, beautiful houses we've done. People couldn't understand why I did not want to light the underneath of balconies with lights from the ceiling. And I kept trying to tell them, you have this beautiful garden, you have these beautiful trees, why am I going to create a light curtain between you and the outside? Everything has to be, you know, reflective lighting, or we light the columns, we'll do this. It's only when I did the mock-ups did we manage to convince them.
Yeah, sure.
You know?
So you would say mock-up is a very important
yeah,
part.
so anyone
Yeah.
trying
I
to
think
sell
mock-up
a
is the only way.
product
Is the only way.
has to have enough lights as back end, which is just their reservoir of lights where you can have the ability to do the mock-ups.
Or else have an architect who can convince the client. Simple
yeah,
as
or
that.
hire a big rig.
No, no. Or no. I mean, it's a, you know, because you're students, I want to tell you this. You know, trust me, it sounds easy today, but today I've become more, I feel more responsible. So I don't have that ability to walk away from a project, but I did at the beginning of my career till few years back. You know, I just could walk out of any project because I had no responsibility. You know, I was like, today I have a studio and a larger studio to run, or not larger bill every month, salary bill too
Largest,
young. And I'm
largest.
worried about that, that, you know, if I walk out and maybe I've become older, so people shouldn't say that I've become cynical about it. But trust me, work only with a client who you can vibe with.
True.
Day one, take that as your thing. You know, it could be the smallest project, he gives you respect. And also please watch your own competence. You can't be faffing around, you know. So you need to be solid and then go with conviction and work with a client who listens to you, respects you and pays you. I mean, this Kohelikan always, you know, she says that, but I don't believe in, you know, parity of fee, because it totally depends on your caliber and the other person's liking of you. I mean, everybody runs their own studios with their own economics, so they can never be parity of fee, shouldn't be also, because otherwise then you're, but all of you get that, you know, only then you'll earn respect for the profession, for your own selves. Yeah.
So my question is, like, whenever you go with your clients related to the selection of lighting fixtures, for example, like experience center like us we have. So what aspects do you consider while selecting the fixtures? It's the general question. It's not that.
So, you know, it depends. Firstly, when you take a client for a selection, it could only be like the first layer, the architectural client has no role, because that's a technical light and everything. It's just where the light is, the luminaire is also a piece of art or a decorative thing where they may have a say or a choice, and also there also you have to ensure that it is in sync with your thought process also. I mean, it's like saying, allowing somebody that you are going to come or you are only designated to wear linen. You can have a choice of what kind of linen, what color of linen, but this is linen, you know. This is the khadi days, back to the khadi days that everybody had to wear khadi. You could choose what kind of khadi. So you have to, as an architect, you have to know what you want. The choices can only be to that extent. It's fine, then it's fine. Otherwise, the first layer, architectural layer, no.
I have one of the question.
तो चले साइड में.
Thank you so much.
It-
Thank you to the audience and my dear panelists. I thank you so much for taking the time out and being